the chalk and was determined to write as many equations as I could in the hope of one person noticing. And one person did notice. That person was the Imam. And he slipped the chalk away from me and said, "Hey, no chalk in the mosque. Chalk is haram."
It is my privilege to welcome today Professor Suborno Isaac Burry.
Thank you, future school leaders, for inviting me as a speaker. I am honored to be in India, and I see that today I have students, parents, teachers, and school leaders in my audience. Today, I will be talking about how the Indian education system is broken and how we together, as parents, teachers, and school leaders, can fix the dynamic of the Indian education system. Right now, the Indian education system works like a charm, but only for the top 10%. But a good education system is one that works for both the top 10% and the bottom 10%. However, India does not accommodate for that because the bottom 10% do not get any good education in India. We need to fix that. A good education system is one where both the top 10% and the bottom 10% get a good education. A good education system is one where both the top 10% and the bottom 10% become scientists. And a good education system is one where both the top 10% and the bottom 10% dream of becoming the next Newton and the next Einstein. Today, I will not only be talking about that issue with the Indian education system, but also how we together can fix it and act as an MKO to our students when they are in need. Principals must act as MKOs. Headmasters must act as MKOs. Teachers must act as MKOs. Parents must act as MKOs. And I know probably all of you adults are shaking in fear right now. You're like, Professor Suborno, what is an MKO? But the thing is, an MKO is a more knowledgeable other. Somebody to help your students and learn. Somebody to help your students, like a teacher, parent, or even a principal. Everybody must help students and nurture students. That is the purpose of an MKO. So, today I will be talking about that. And I will be talking about how my teacher made me a manis. And this will change the way you teach your students. And I hope that this speech will be the catalyst to fix the Indian education system. This speech will change the way you teach your students. I hope that this will spread the mindset that you shouldn't tell your students what to become. You should nurture them over time and give them an opportunity to show them what they want to become. I see all these cases of fans' parents screaming at them, "Become the next Suborno Isaac now! In 15 seconds you have to become the next Einstein." But that's not right. You can't tell your student or your son or anybody with a relation to you. You can't tell them what to become. You can only nurture them and help them into what they want to become. You should only give them an opportunity to let themselves go on their own path. They can be the next artistic Suborno Isaac, for example, the next musical Suborno Isaac. So parents, please stop beating up your children. Well, we don't need that here. But anyway, this will change the way you teach your students. Let us begin with how the Indian education system is broken. The Indian education system has two types of mainstream education. Number one, you have the Kendriya Vidyalayas. I think that's how you pronounce them. Anyway, these are urban schools used mostly in urban cities. And these schools carbon copy from the exact same textbooks approved by the National Council for Education in India, which is called the NCSE. Now, this has only one upside. Students will not see any difference in the curriculum once they transfer from school to school, and thus they won't get left behind. But there are many more downsides to this. Number one, students aren't intrigued because you only have questions that aren't interesting. They can be aced if you memorize the material of the lesson, but if you knew everything surrounding this but nothing about this, then you'd get a big damn 0 on that test. So, these questions are not interesting at all and do not intrigue the students. Rather, they just pile up stress on the students. Number 2, since there is no money spending on schools, at least in most of India, that means that there's no hands-on equipment and there are no more knowledgeable adults. Why? Well, there are definitely knowledgeable adults, just that they're not more knowledgeable. These teachers are not good at the subject they're teaching it. They're only good at memorization. And that's the problem, the main problem with Indian schools. Because poor people, the bottom 10% and maybe even the bottom 90%, they are getting this kind of horrible education. They are getting these kind of horrible teachers and horrible tests and exams that don't intrigue them at all, but rather pile stress up on them so they cannot become the next Einstein. They cannot become the next innovator. The thing is, there is one other type of education, which is actually some good quality, but it is not for the poor. It's for the rich. The second type of education are called exclusive schools. Well, first of all, we need to look at India in its entirety. So, India, each state has its own Department of Education that has some freedom on its own curriculum. But one of the most disparate states from India would be Kerala. Kerala has been disparate from India in many ways. A much better economy, a much higher suicide and alcoholism rate, and a much better education system. Why? Well, the thing is, number 1, they actually have intriguing tests, open-ended questions that just can't be solved by memorizing the content of the lesson. You have to take the content, then apply thinking and logical reasoning to that, and then get the answer. So, number 1, that's the first reason. But then the second reason is they actually have more knowledgeable at the keyword, more knowledgeable. So, these teachers not only let students expand at their own pace, and they don't force students to become somebody. They don't force students to become anybody that they don't want to. They allow students to go on their own path and learn their own curriculum. These schools are extremely good if you actually want to become the next Newton or Einstein. So, you might be thinking, hey, the Indian education system isn't that bad after all. But you would be wrong. Why? Well, Kerala's education is extremely expensive. Thus, it only allows the top 10% to receive actual good education, while the bottom 90% are screwed over by the Kendriya Vidyalaya. We need the Kendriya Vidyalaya to improve. We need the quality of the bottom's education to improve. I have faith in Prime Minister Modi's ability to change the way that education is taught in India. You may be thinking, what's the difference between Kerala and India? Well, the thing is, that difference is solidified in their teaching philosophy. The teaching philosophy of the rest of India, especially the Kendriya Vidyalayas, whatever they are based off of John Piaget's idea that you have this zone of proximal development, but it does not, there's no way to expand it manually. It instead expands as you go on. It expands via age. But the thing is, this is wrong, both on the lower bound and on the upper bound. On the lower bound, you have people like me, people who are taught well and nurtured during their first few years. So they are much smarter than Piaget expects them to be. That's it breaking on the lower bound, but that's not much. It also breaks on the upper bound, because students who sometimes don't receive any education, like Faraday before he was 14, students who don't receive any education are a bit less smart than Piaget expects them to be. So, Piaget's theory breaks on both sides. So can we do better? Yes. This teaching philosophy, the one where we do better, in fact, it's used by Kerala today. It's called Vygotsky's philosophy. It envisioned the same zone of proximal development, but this time, there's no way to grow for it automatically. In fact, this accounts for both the lower bound and upper bound inaccuracy. So, as this ZPD expands the zone of proximal development, this can only expand if you get some help. Sometimes it's from natural experiments, and nature can be your MKO. But sometimes you just need some second-hand experience. That comes in the form of MKOs, like parents, teachers, and principals. We need people like those to be our MKOs, our more knowledgeable others, who can help us in times of need, and who can give a good education to our students. I am giving this speech to change the way education is being taught and to make the rest of India follow Vygotsky's example, not just one random state. In fact, Vygotsky's way of learning had even worked for me. I have been learning using Vygotsky's way ever since I was 2 years old. But it started all on the eve of my second birthday. Now, the only reason I'm telling my story in particular is because my father never screamed to me, become the next Bose, or become the next Tagore, or become the next Sachin Tendulkar. Instead, he gave me a series of tasks, each in a different activity, in a different topic. And then he saw which one I liked the most, the one I enjoyed the most. And then he equipped a carefully planned lesson plan in the topic that I was the most interested in. That's how you find somebody's passion and allow them to become their own person. That is how you serve as an MKO. Today, I will be telling the multiple different activities my father gave me in order to maybe give you some ideas for what you will teach your students or what kind of activities you will give your students. It was April 8th, 2014, the eve of my second birthday. That night, I asked my father for a challenge, something that would change my life because the generic candles and cake were boring to me. My father granted the request, and I woke up to my father calling me to room 0. What was room 0? Well, it used to be our garage, but my father had completely emptied it out. It became room 0. I don't know where the logic came from, as right after he named it that, he stuck up 4 blackboards, 3 on the wall and 1 on the ceiling, and then put a singular piece of chalk there. Maybe it should have been named room 5 or the chalk room. I went into room 0, and I saw that there was some writing on the blackboard. The writing said, "We find the title and the author of this book right below you. You have 1 hour." And I saw a book named Principia sitting right next to me. I was laughing. How hard could this be? What, did my father think I was illiterate? Didn't it say the name all over the book? And didn't it say it on the title? Didn't it say the title and the author on the cover and on the spine? I looked for the cover and the spine first, but it turns out I'd been a fool. Why? Well, it appeared that there was no cover, just the first page, and there was no spine, just a bunch of skinny white string. And when I looked at the back for some kind of blurb, there was no back, just the last page. So I realized that my father had outsmarted me, but not so fast. I knew that there must have been some text in the book that would have given me clues to what the author's name or the titles would be. So I looked through the book, only to see that my father had blocked every single instant of the author's name and the title in the book with Sharpie. Now I realized that I could not get past the dead end. I was going to have to try something new. And then I realized my last hope would be a picture. Hopefully he didn't censor that. When I flipped through the pages, I saw a picture. Oh my goodness, it was beautiful. My father didn't censor the pictures. This must have been intended. This must have given me a clue. So I looked at the picture, and it seemed to be the earth with a cannon on top. The cannon was shooting ball after ball after ball, but they were all falling back down to the earth. But then suddenly one ball is shot with so much force and so much velocity that it never makes a touchdown. It goes above the ground and goes into orbit. And I peculiarly realized that this was extremely similar to a question that Sir Isaac Newton himself had asked. Sir Isaac Newton had asked, if an apple falls, does the moon fall? But I realized that this cannonball was reminiscent of the moon. This cannonball was just like the moon. And since this book also looked 1700s looking, I realized that the author must be Sir Isaac Newton. But what about the name? Well, for the title, I thought, hey, there's a cannonball in the picture and an author is Newton, so the answer must be Newton's Cannonball. Man, just clap for my 2-year-old brain there. However, I realized that Newton's Cannonball wasn't exactly right. Regardless of that mistake, I passed it off, knowing that the actual answer was Principia Mathematica, and I fell in love with math and science on that day. And that day, I wanted to give every child the same opportunity I had, to be captivated by math and science, not guns and bullets. Now, I had discovered my passion, but my father had not realized it yet, so he had still given me more activity. On my 3rd birthday, I was met with another challenge. This time, I was taken to the 9/11 Memorial, a place I'd later nicknamed Ground Zero, because of its similarity to Room Zero. Anyway, I was sent to the memorial pool in the middle of the memorial, and I was asked to find the significance of the pool. I didn't exactly know what 9/11 was at the time, but I knew that 19 years ago there was this big glass building and some airplanes put it down. And so I looked at the pool and it seemed merely decorative. What was the kind of significance that my father was trying to teach me? I thought this was just some kind of decorative pool like Niagara Falls or the ones you see at your homes. But the thing was, it was not that. It was instead having a much bigger purpose. A few minutes later, I saw 2 people pass by. One of them was crying and another one tossed the rose into the pool. And I realized there must be some more significance to this than just being a Niagara Falls replica. And yes, there was more significance. I looked around me, maybe for some clues. And then I looked behind me to see the World Trade Center itself, that big glass building I had heard about. And I realized that this place was a memorial to all the people who had died when the big glass building toppled and fell over. And I realized that 9/11 was that incident, was that day. But why did my father give me this task specifically? Well, when I asked him that right after the challenge, he got tears in his eyes, and he told me a long story. He said that my uncle had almost lost his life during 9/11, and this challenge was very special to him. Thus, he cheered me on when I got the right meaning in the pool. I didn't exactly fall in love with politics, but I still fell in love with truth and peace. And my father had still tried. My father didn't know if I was interested in politics or not, meaning just given birth to some new baby, and he didn't know what the hell this guy liked. And then, on my 4th birthday, he tested me again. This time, he tested me on religion. He put me in the middle of a huge mosque. In the mosque, there was a few imams, and I felt around my pockets. Maybe there was something of use there. I heard my father say, do something of significance, before he walked away, watching me from the park right next to the mosque. And I thought, what could doing something of significance be? It was certainly much harder than finding something of significance. But I was determined anyway to do this challenge. When I rummaged around my pockets, I felt chalk in my hands. I took out the chalk And then I looked around. Maybe there was somewhere this chalk could be used. And then I realized they were all like kids here. Some are younger, some are older. They all have one thing in common. They're not praying. They're just tapping on random cell phones. Even though the Imam supposedly prohibits that, according to their rules. However, I realized that these people would be addicted to a silicon screen all their life and think of screens as more important than actual math and science when they grew up, if I didn't introduce them to math and science. So, I took out the chalk and was determined to write as many equations as I could in the hope of one person noticing. And one person did notice. That person was the Imam. And he slipped the chalk away from me and said, "Hey, no chalk in the mosque. Chalk is haram." But I realized that if chalk is haram, then why isn't the phone haram in the middle of the mosque? I realized that the Imam was just playing a dumb trick. He was trying to erase any sense of math and science in the mosque. But he was still allowing iPhones and stuff. That was how hypocritical the Imam was. So, on that day, I didn't fall in love with religion, but hey, my father tried once again. And my father had still given me tests. However, started to notice a sudden upward trend towards math and science. And that's why the little challenges, they started to stop coming in. Finally, I waited so long that it was my 5th birthday. And on my 5th birthday, he again tried religion. I don't know why, but my father has his ways. Anyway, my father tried to get me into a religion again by giving me a challenge. When I woke up, I was saying, "Yes, I turned 5. I looked behind me and I saw there was a strange message heaped to the wall behind me. It read, not following the name of the book, but it said, "Read the Quran for 1 hour. You have 6 hours." And I was confused. What did my father mean? Was he drunk while writing this? Was he just crazy? Did he have a bad concept of math and science? Was he crazy? I didn't know what my father was thinking when he wrote. I looked on the table and there was the Quran. Seemingly straightforward task, huh? So I read the holy word of God for 1 hour. But then I realized a crucial thing. I had 5 hours left. So now that basic math hadn't worked out in my favor, I started to think that something bigger was at play here. And so I realized that there were 5 handwritten symbols sitting next to the timer. These symbols included a cross, a crescent and star, the Star of David, the Dharma wheel, and last but not least, the sacred letter O. I realized that these were all holy objects to some kind of religion. These were all holy objects to some group of people. So I realized, why not embrace their values? Why not embrace what's important to them, even if you don't think it's as important? I knew that I had to read these other 4 holy books. Well, I thought, where are they? Because they weren't on the table, they weren't anywhere that I had remembered, so where were they? Well, maybe a look through what my father was purchasing would help. So I coerced my mom into giving me the password to our Amazon account, and I saw he had purchased all 4 holy books just the day earlier. My goodness, some incriminating acts going on here, I see. But anyway, I looked through his purchases. He was purchasing the Bible, the Torah, the Tripitaka, and the Bhagavad Gita. Some incriminating acts for sure. So I realized that there must be some books scattered around. So I used my 1 hour wisely to find all of these books hidden around the house. And once I read all of these books, I realized the lesson, empathy. However, I didn't exactly fall in love with religion on that day. My father realized, hey, this religion thing isn't exactly working out. Let's switch back to politics. On my 6th birthday, my father once again dragged me into the realm of politics with another challenge. This time, it was kind of a mix between politics and religion. He asked me, what do 15 million people contribute more to society than 2 billion? And I thought, that can't be possible. 15 million and 2 billion. 15 million is so small compared to 2 billion. What, was my father drunk again? Did he get the million and billion mixed up? What had happened? Well, I just went with it. And I realized though, 15 million, that's the population of Jews. And 2 billion, that's the population of Muslims. And I realized that Jews have contributed a lot to the world in scientific discovery. They haven't committed any major terrorist attacks. Only one terrorist organization from the Jews is still alive and running, called Sikari, with 2 eyes at the end, just to be clear. But then, you have Muslims. Okay, Muslims have not made any big discoveries since the Islamic Golden Age. And Islamic terrorist attacks have been higher than ever, especially with Afghanistan. So yeah, let's just say things are mixed when it comes to Muslims and their contributions. But I didn't want to just speculate. So instead, I asked my father to go to a Jewish community, Borough Park, and the Palestinian sector of a Muslim community, which was Beirut. So I went to Beirut. Everybody was talking about bombing Israel, taking away Tel Aviv, things like that, all these military strategies. And one of them was actually about the kebabs next door. Tasty, or am I right? But anyway, I realized that these people aren't talking about science, talking about guns, bombs, and tasty chicken kebabs. So, that must mean that there's some difference between them and this Jewish community. The Borough Park community I saw, everybody was talking about science discoveries, everybody was talking about that damn food, everybody was talking about all what they learned in their college class instead of how to take the Gaza Strip. So, I saw there was this massive difference between the Palestinian sector of Beirut and Borough Park in its entirety. And that difference was that these Muslim children are taught to kill for justice in the Quran, while these Jewish children are not taught that way. These Jewish children are taught to become scientists, mathematicians, artists, etc., etc. I realized the main central lesson of this that Muslims have contributed less to the world than Jews. But I didn't exactly fall in love with religion. So my father tried one last time to try and see if I had another pass. But the math and science trend was going upwards, I tell you. In fact, we'd already created a channel called Barry Science Lab. But anyway, on my 7th birthday, finally, I was asked to go stick up some flags. I was given 10 mini American flags. And I was asked to go around both Borough Park and Beirut and stick 5 flags each in each neighborhood, wherever I would like. And so I planted 5 flags. One on a street, one on a store, one in the front of a home, one in the back of a home. I had just planted 5 in Beirut. But what about Borough Park? I planted one of them on a store, another one on a store, another one next to the road, another one on the front of a home, and the final one on a park. And then when I came back the next day to see their reactions, all of the ones in Beirut who were either gone or heavily vandalized, while the ones in Borough Park were fine. At least one of them was a bit wrong because the one in the park had some dirt blown onto it from a gust of wind that had come earlier. But anyway, I saw that there were 2 wildly different reactions. And so it was kind of like discovering something in chemistry. 2 wildly different reactions to the same thing. That day, I realized that Beirut is a bit less patriotic and hates America just a bit more than Borough Park. And so, the thing was, I still didn't fall in love with religion and politics on that day. And my father finally knew it must have been math and science that I loved. And that passion, he crafted a careful curriculum and allowed me to go on my own path. But he still created Barry Science Lab and pushed the motive that Barry Science Lab was like a science lab. I want teachers to teach their students just like this, just like my father taught me. This is the purpose of the speech, so we can change the dynamic of teaching. Thank you, everybody.
Subscribe to Bari Science Lab to fall in love with math and science, especially programming.